Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This is something my mom witnessed while shopping at Target earlier today. Mom was walking through the woman's clothing aisle when she heard Karen screaming at an employee about not having the clothing she wanted. Something about it wasn't the right style or color or whatever. Employee is trying her best to help Karen, but Karen is just doing what a typical Karen does. She eventually calms down and asks the employee to show her a fitting room, and the employee points out where they are. Karen walks in, yelling at the employee, "You better still be here to help me once I'm finished." And the employee takes the opportunity to go to her manager and tell her what happened. The manager goes to the fitting rooms to confront Karen while she's in there. "Ma'am, are you still in there?" "What do you want?" "Ma'am, this is a family establishment. You cannot be harassing my co-workers like this." "Well, this is America. I can do whatever I want." "Ma'am, once you're fully closed, could you please come out so we can talk through this?" Karen then busts the door open and steps out wearing nothing except her undies. "Ma'am, could you please step back in and dress yourself?" "What are you gonna do, huh? Arrest me?" "Please, could you just put some clothes on and then we can talk things over?" Karen then starts complaining about her stomach hurting and feeling sick, and then suddenly vomits herself all over the fitting room. The manager is trying to calm her down while she's screaming for an ambulance and vomiting everywhere. The manager calls for a hazmat cleanup and is trying to get Karen to stop vomiting everywhere. Eventually, the police are called and she is cleaned up and escorted out by the cops. And that's about when my mom finishes her shopping and heads out. Crazy stuff. Well, good morning, afternoon, or evening. I'm a writer and a photographer, where I like to visit abandoned places and urban life. I own TikTok and YouTube where I post about my travels. And I'm a marijuana user. I feel that marijuana makes me more creative, and so I tend to eventually use it to write, study about my current field, study for college, I'm trying to be a doctor, and to photograph places from a different perspective. In this case, I only go to the ones I've visited before. But I understand that some people may not like marijuana because of prejudice or for another reason. One of the neighbors doesn't care and smokes too. Another doesn't care, but the upstairs neighbor, precisely where I smoke from the joint out the window so as not to disturb others in the hallway, said he wouldn't like me to use marijuana at home. Again, through the conversation, I try to understand the situation. He has nothing against those who use it, and he found my responsibility to notify the neighbors about my habits admirable, but he has serious problems with allergies to smells. Being that his house has hospital smell as they only use neutral disinfectants, and that marijuana sometimes triggers it. So I started to only smoke bong at home, which smells less. When he's not home, I watch his car leave, and then I keep a good relationship with the neighborhood. So after this introduction, I can get to Karen. On the day in question, my neighbor was home and I didn't have my bong. My cat broke it. And I was researching places to visit and studying photography. So to smoke a joint, I went down from the building and went to a public square next to my house. I sat down, took my notebook and lit a small joint, when I noticed out of the corner of my eyes an angry Karen coming towards me. She said to me, "What is that, you bum?" I replied, "Well, I'm smoking. Are you flustered with that?" "Of course. Can't you see that you're poisoning the air in the entire square?" "This square is 1 hectare and I was just in a very woody place with no one around." So I said, "I'm sorry, I'm going to put it out and I'm going to look for a better place to smoke. What's your problem with weed though?" "My problem is you guys who let people wander around." I realized that she was going to start a prejudiced conversation that I honestly wasn't in the mood to refute. So I got up from the bench and I walked away. She shouted, "What are you doing?" "Well, since I was disturbing you, I will smoke somewhere else." "Okay?" She comes up to me and takes the already extinguished joint from my hand and says, "No, now you're going to wait for the police. I already called." I had nothing else with me. I left with just the cigarette I was going to use, so I took the most unexpected step and sat down on a bench. She asked, "Did you decide to wait?" "Yeah." Karen furrowed her face as if she sensed some nonsense was going to happen. After all, the other guy she freaks out must leave without paying to see. Then, still cursing me, she had the police, which is surprising since she said she already called him. Then a few minutes later, a policeman arrived. He looked at Karen cursing me and already made a face of disappointment. I had already experienced problems with the police before, and I knew that it was enough to say that I'm a user, give a justification for smoking on a street, and report the small amount that the maximum they would ask was for me to sign a term stating that I knew that he was on drugs and that this is illegal. But for non-prison users, and to avoid getting a record, they recommend the voluntary donation of a basic food basket, which I already did considering that I helped myself without having a dirty name. I helped a policeman who did his job to stop me, and I already help a family that is hungry. Then a policeman arrives and says, "What is happening now, Karen?" Then I realize that he probably already knew her. She answered, "This spot is marginalizing the square where I want to pass." He asks me, "Do you have marijuana?" I answered, "No," which was true since my only joint had been captured by Karen. Then she says, "And this one?" showing the joint in her hand. So I answer, "It's with you, it's probably yours." The policeman chuckles and says, "Karen, I didn't know you smoked. We'll need to arrest you for that." Karen is in shock and says, "No, it's his, I swear." The policeman says, "Lucky for you, this amount is not a crime in Brazil." Karen is relieved that she doesn't know the basics of her own country's laws and hands over the joint and leaves. After talking to the policeman, I explained my situation and that it wasn't an affront to go smoking in a square. I just wanted to respect my neighbor's allergy. He understood my point and we discussed the legalization where he was in favor but was not speaking because he was on duty and he only ordered me to avoid smoking in the street because this is theoretically a crime, and if he observed it, he would be obliged by law to intervene. He too explained that Karen keeps calling the police for absolutely everything, from skateboarders riding the ring or teenagers wanting to ride a swing. Everything for her is a criminal offense, and so my excuse of the marijuana being hers will probably reduce the calls they are forced to answer, but knowing it was a nonsense. Eventually I pass by this policeman and until I say hello, he always asks, "You don't have anything, do you?" And I always say no. In the end, as I said, she wouldn't be arrested, but the panic she felt was pretty funny. I know that what I do is illegal, but I always try to do it in a way that guarantees my individual freedom without disturbing anyone's life. Edit 1. Thanks to everyone who gave me any tips. I appreciate it. 2. I understand the buzz about wanting to be a doctor and I have some facts about it. I try to be as respectable as possible. I know I can get stoned to study medicine or when I go to work professionally as a photographer. It is not feasible to use any substance when working on something that affects the lives of others, whether opening a person or taking pictures of an apartment to be sold. It is remarkable the existence of mental problems in overworked doctors, which leads them to be alcoholics or users of self-prescribed prescription drugs. You shouldn't be concerned about a joint smoked by a student outside of your work. What about the mental health of an entire class who are always ready to help you? I already had the nightmare of having a depressed doctor. It was November of 2019 and I worked at a local pizza chain of around 6 locations in college. I was a server, but our dining room underwent a renovation. That would have been March of 2020, ironically. That made all of our orders become takeout and delivery. Now, for some inexplicable reason, our location got a lot of prank calls, to the point where my manager made a new policy saying that all the orders over $40 had to be paid with a credit card over the phone, and to hang up and report prank callers so he could plug the number on our phone system. When our manager quit in November of 2019 to work for the pizza place with a red roof, no one really wanted to assume his duty. It was 2 times as much work with no pay increase of any kind. So the management of the chain appointed the regional supervisor, who we will call Mike, to oversee management for our location temporarily. No one liked this supervisor because Mike had total power trips on the employees, threatening and even attempting to fire people. Luckily, upper management denied all his requests. Mike never worked in food service before, but he would constantly demand for us to cook things faster, even if going against food safety regulations. Mike refused to help when a small fire started in the oven that he denied to have shut down when an employee noted that the roller would get stuck, causing pizzas to get stuck inside. Mike made inappropriate, explicit comments about female employees. Mike was racist. He once tried getting a colored employee that didn't have access to the cash drawer arrested after he miscounted the drawer. It was off by $6. Mike was just a bad person, to be honest. I could keep going. One evening on a Saturday, we got an online order to a local church for 40 large pizzas, some soda, and like 20 orders of breadsticks. Came out to like $800 in total to be paid by cash on pickup. First red flag. I call the customer on the phone and tell them about the credit card policy. They said that they have a check, something we stopped accepting because of all the fraud nonsense 6 months ago by our old manager. Then they wanted to cancel the order. No problem. We didn't have to refund any sort of credit card, so I just pulled a ticket from the kitchen and canceled the order on the POS. Easy. I got the ticket, and while I was walking out, Mike asked me what I'm doing. I told him about the weird order and how they wanted to cancel it. He then scolds me and tells me about running a real business and to always accept any formal payment. I told him about the policies the old manager put in place, and he said to no longer follow them. He calls the customer and tells him that they will be able to get him his pizzas. The kitchen makes all 40 pizzas, all of the breadsticks, and we provide him with 12 bottles of 2 liters Pepsi, and the customer shows up in a hoodie and sweatpants. When he pays, he gives us a cashier check for the precise amount written by another organization that is not on the order. Second red flag. I started to think that this person is not from the church. I alert Mike and he tells me to stop being such a wuss, saying, "Get back to work." So I take it, put it in a drawer, and he goes on his merry way. I clock out 30 minutes later and go back to my dorm. On Monday, I woke up to a voicemail from the finance department wanting to meet about a fraudulent check that was received as payment for an order that weekend. I meet up with them at the management office and I tell them everything. How Mike made me take an order that went against policy and how he ignored the red flags. I also brought to their attention the multiple grievances that have gone ignored about Mike. HR got involved and Mike was fired. The final nail in the coffin was when the finance manager found out that Mike made an inappropriate comment about her daughter that worked at another location. During weekends and holidays, my cousins and I and some friends of ours will set up a net and play volleyball like we would in a normal game. All of them play in teams for fun, but I'm a professional player on one of the higher ranking teams in my country. Besides this advantage, I stand at 6 feet 11 inches, so I never actually gave any effort. I would pass the ball to the other side, then do blocks on my tiptoes. I would serve from with a low hit and not try to defend much. The teams would be picked 100% randomly by number picking. The team I would end with would celebrate and the others would try to avoid me getting the ball all the time Cause with my height and experience, no one could catch me on a block. I agreed to not spike at all and mildly direct the ball as much as the game rules allows me to, so the game will be pretty balanced. Everyone had fun cause none of us took it seriously, and we did all sorts of dumb stuff to get points and it was really pleasant. Things are okay for months, no one complaining about anything until two new girls come along. They were friends of my cousins. They played volleyball in a high-ranking team on the U21 teens games. They were a strong influence on everyone and they were trying really hard to win. And suddenly we counted all net fouls, ball directing and wrong positioning in the field as a point to the opposite team. One day the team making ended with a best of 6 on one side and I was with all the weaker ones. Now it seemed like a great time for me to actually jump, which I didn't have to until now because of my height, and mildly passing/directing the ball. The other two girls were spiking with all their might and trying to play tricks, but I am too experienced with basic tricks, and I was able to catch almost half of their attacks in my block and win the point, which made them pretty angry. Also having 3 Lepros, for those who don't know, the Lepro in volleyball is usually a pretty short player behind the 3-meter line who are specialists on defending. On the back line, we somehow kept catching up to them. It was all fun and games with no one saying anything until we passed them at the score 16-15 and sets ended at 25. From this moment on, they would try to give a foul to everything I did. Or you touched the net, or you directed the ball, or you stepped on a line during serve. 6 or 7 times in a row they tried to get a point from me for directing the ball, and now frustrated I was like, do you all prefer it if I spiked it? And positive crowd noises were to be heard from both teams. The 2 girls had no idea that I even play volleyball cause, as I said, I never actually gave any efforts for small friendly games like these. I spiked the game was 110 km per hour and my vertical reach is 362 centimeters. And now pandemonium. The set ended in less than 5 minutes after my team was passing every ball on me to get a point, laughing hard with the privilege the opposite team gave me. Easy to say they all agreed I wouldn't get falsely fouled for any reason again, and the 2 girls stopped acting as the best ones in there. Cause, as I like to say, everyone in a friendly game is equal. It's all meant to be done for fun. If you're actually better and remain humble, people will respect you for this trait. Acting big may satisfy your ego for a while, but there is always a bigger fish, and people will always wait for you to make mistakes to get it on you. Stay humble and respect everyone. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.